3 months ago, I was living in a $4.2 million home in California with my wife and kids. Today, I'm holding a letter that proves my entire life was built on lies, and the woman who ruined me might have unknowingly saved me. My name is Fletcher Morrison, 47 years old. Until recently, I worked as a commercial insurance adjuster in Pasadena, spending my days assessing other people's losses and helping them rebuild. I had what most would call the American dream: a successful career, a beautiful wife, and two amazing kids. Cordelia, my wife of 18 years, was everything people admired: confident, driven, and stunning. Our twins, Quinlan and Brina, were my pride and joy, bright, kind, and the reason I worked as hard as I did. Our home sat high in the hills, with a view that stretched across the entire city, glowing like a carpet of lights at night. I believed I had it all. I thought I knew my story. Fletcher Morrison, son of Wilfred Morrison, a quiet librarian who raised me after my father supposedly died in a car accident when I was 12. Dad, I was told, had been a construction worker who died young, leaving Mom to raise me alone in Ohio on a librarian's salary. We didn't have much, but she made sure I never went without. She was the kind of woman who never forgot birthdays, kept photo albums neatly labeled, and made sure homework and vegetables were both handled on time. Cordelia and I met in high school, me at 17, her at 16, and fell in love like only teenagers can. She was magnetic, the kind of person who didn't need to try to be noticed. After college, she went into real estate and excelled quickly. Together, we built a life piece by piece: careers, home, children, and everything in between. When the kids were born, we moved to California for better opportunities. Quinlan was our athlete, tall, confident, already being scouted by colleges as a sophomore. Brina, the artist, had her grandmother's quiet creativity. She could draw anything and had this way of seeing the world that made people pause. For 47 years, that was my story. A man who worked hard, built a good life, and had no reason to doubt any of it. Then everything started to unravel. It began subtly, about 18 months ago. Cordelia taking phone calls in private, working late, saying she was closing bigger deals. She started looking at me differently, like she was searching for someone she no longer recognized. The warmth between us faded slowly, until the house felt colder every day. The kids noticed too. Quinlan would ask why Mom seemed angry all the time. Brina started keeping to herself, sketching darker images, families smiling, but fractured beneath the surface. I thought it was stress, maybe midlife tension, and tried everything to reconnect. Date nights, honest talks, small surprises, but every effort only pushed her further away. Then came the divorce papers. And not just a simple split, an assault on everything I thought I was. Cordelia's lawyer claimed I was a gambling addict, drowning in hidden debts, reckless with money, and unfit to parent. They had evidence: fake bank statements, casino receipts I'd never seen, even witness testimonies from people claiming I'd borrowed money and never repaid it. None of it was real. But somehow, it looked official. The court hearings were devastating. I sat there as my character was dismantled piece by lawyers who described me like a criminal. My own wife, my partner of nearly 2 decades, wouldn't even look at me. When the judge awarded her everything, the house, custody, even my business assets, I felt something inside me break. Outside the courthouse, Cordelia walked up to me with a cold, triumphant smile. "You'll never see Quinlan and Brona again," she whispered. "I'm moving them to Portland next month, and you don't have the money to stop me." That's when I realized this wasn't a divorce. It was destruction. Something deliberate and cruel, planned down to the last detail. Within 6 weeks, I'd lost my home, my career, and my children. My insurance license was revoked over financial misconduct that never happened. With nowhere else to go, I returned to Ohio, to my late mother's house empty since her death 2 years earlier. I packed what was left of my life into my Honda Civic and drove 1,200 miles back to the place I hadn't lived since I was 18. The drive took 3 days, each mile feeling like I was moving backward in time. When I finally pulled into the driveway on Maple Street in Akron, it felt like a ghost returning home. The house hadn't changed, a tidy 1960s ranch with white siding, black shutters, and a small porch where Mom used to sit every evening with tea and a library book. I sat in the car for a long time before going in. This was supposed to be temporary, a stop to gather myself before fighting back. But staring at that modest house, I couldn't ignore how far I'd fallen. 3 months earlier, I'd watched Los Angeles sparkle from my bedroom window. Now I looked across at Mrs. Patterson's garden gnomes. Mom, Wilfred Morrison, had lived here for 35 years. She bought it when Dad died, using his life insurance and what little savings they'd scraped together. It was her act of hope, a home for us to start again. She never remarried or dated. Instead, she devoted her life to raising me and running the public library downtown. Every morning she'd make breakfast, pack my lunch, and walk 6 blocks to work with her own paper bag lunch in hand. Every night she returned with a stack of books, some for the library, some for us. She made our small world feel full. We didn't take fancy vacations, but she made adventures out of camping in our own backyard under the stars, telling stories about constellations over cocoa. When I got into building model airplanes, she took on extra hours to buy kits and helped me paint every tiny piece. She was steady, always sure of what needed to be done and how to do it. I didn't realize the strength it took until I became a father myself. Oddly, we always had just enough. Never more, never desperate. When I needed school clothes or the car broke down, she somehow managed. When I went to college, she covered what scholarships didn't. Once, in my 20s, I finally asked her how. She just smiled and said, "You find a way when someone depends on you. That's what parents do." When I unlocked that same door years later, her scent, lavender soap and old books, still lingered. Everything was as she'd left it, glasses on the end table, her book open mid-chapter. Standing there, surrounded by her quiet life, the reality of my own collapse hit hard. My kids were far away, my wife despised me, my career was gone. But I made a choice that night. This house, the only thing left untouched by Cordelia's lawyers, was mine, free and clear. I'd fix it, sell it, and use every dollar to fight for my kids. It felt like a plan. I didn't know then that my mother had left me something far more valuable than a house. Renovating the place became my mission. The work gave me focus, stripping wallpaper, sanding floors, repainting walls. Every nail and brushstroke felt like reclaiming control. When I reached the basement, Mom's old storage area, filled with decades of boxes, I began sorting through everything: holiday decorations, photo albums, my childhood projects. That's when I noticed something strange. Near the old oil furnace, converted to gas years ago, the concrete floor looked different. Scratch marks, fresh dust patterns, scuffs that didn't belong. The furnace had been moved recently, but by whom? Mom had been frail before she died. She couldn't have done it. Curiosity got the better of me. I disconnected the gas line, used a dolly, and after hours of strain, shifted the heavy furnace about 3 feet. My back ached, but what I saw behind it froze me in place. A small safe built into the wall, painted gray to match the concrete. It looked old, well used, and perfectly hidden. There was no brand, no label, just a dial with numbers from 0 to 99. 10,000 possible combinations. I stared at it, wondering what secret my mother could have hidden so carefully. Then something clicked in my memory: her birthday calls. Every year on March 15, exactly at 7:23 a.m., she'd call to wish me happy birthday, the precise moment she said I was born. March 15, 1977, 031577. I turned the dial, right to 03, left to 15, right to 77. A soft click. The safe opened. What I found inside would change everything I thought I knew about my life. Inside the safe was far more than I expected. It was deep and packed tight. The first thing I saw was cash stacks of $100 bills bound with rubber bands. Some were crisp and new, others yellowed with age. I counted them slowly, hands trembling. The total came to $847,000. Beneath the money were documents, multiple driver's licenses, all with my mother's face but under different names. Isabella Reyes from New Mexico, Maria Santos from Arizona, Catherine Walsh from Nevada. Each one showed her at a different age, yet they were undeniably her. Alongside the IDs were matching social security cards, birth certificates, and even a passport for Isabella Reyes dated 1988. All of them looked real, not forged. My mother, the quiet librarian who'd raised me, had lived under multiple identities. At the bottom of the safe was a sealed envelope with my name written on it, in her neat handwriting. Seeing Fletcher written in her familiar script, so ordinary, so personal, shook me more than anything else. I sat down on the cold basement floor and opened it. The first line made my blood run cold. "My dearest Fletcher, if you're reading this, it means they've finally found you, and I'm no longer here to protect you." I froze. The letter continued. "Your real name is Fletcher Castellano. Your father didn't die in a car accident when you were 12. His name was Vincent Castellano, and he was murdered by the Torino crime family in Chicago on September 18, 1989. I witnessed his murder because I was meant to die with him. Instead, I ran. I took you and disappeared. 3 months later, I testified against his killers before a federal grand jury. My hands shook so hard I could barely keep reading. My father murdered by the mob. My mother, a federal witness. And my entire identity, a fabrication. We entered the Witness Protection Program in January 1990. I became Wilfred Morrison, and you became Fletcher Morrison. The government gave us new identities, a modest settlement to start over, and a promise that we'd be safe as long as we never revealed who we were. Suddenly, everything made sense. The quiet life, the way she always had just enough money, her reluctance to discuss the past, and her constant warnings about privacy. She hadn't just been cautious, she'd been keeping us alive. The letter went on. The money in this safe is what's left of our government settlement, along with what I managed to save over the years. But there's something more important you need to know. Something I discovered too late to warn you about properly. My heart pounded as I read the next lines. I hired private investigators to keep an eye on you in California 3 years ago. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I heard whispers that people were asking about the Castellano family again. What they found broke my heart. Your wife, Cordelia, has been working with people who've been searching for us for decades. They found you through her and used her to get close. I felt sick. The woman I'd loved since I was a teenager, the mother of my children, had unknowingly been helping the same people who'd murdered my father. I don't know if she understood what she was part of or if she was manipulated. But the divorce, the false gambling evidence, it was all designed to destroy you financially and emotionally, forcing you back here to Ohio. They wanted you to return to the one place they knew I might have hidden something that could lead them to other witnesses or evidence from the original case. I could barely breathe. Every disaster of the past year, losing my family, my career, my reputation, had been orchestrated by a crime family still trying to erase witnesses after 35 years. But my mother's letter wasn't just a confession, it was a map for survival. There's a phone number at the bottom of this letter. Call Marshal Theodore Vance with the U.S. Marshal Service. He's been waiting for your call since the day I died. Tell him you're Vincent Castellano's son, and that you're ready to finish what we started. Below that, written in red ink and underlined 3 times, was a number. Beneath it, her final words, "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth while I was alive. I wanted you to have a normal life, free from fear. But I always knew this day might come. You are stronger than you think, Fletcher. You come from people who never back down from a fight. Your father would be proud of the man you've become. I know I am. Use the money wisely. Get your children back. And remember, sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads you exactly where you need to be." I sat there for nearly an hour, staring at the letter, trying to process the impossible. My whole life had been a lie, but one built out of protection, not deception. My mother hadn't betrayed me. She'd saved me twice. Then I picked up my phone and dialed the number. On the second ring, A deep voice answered. Vance, Marshall Vance. Marshall Vance. This is Fletcher Morrison, I said, my voice unsteady. But I think my real name is Fletcher Castellano. There was a long silence, then a slow exhale. Son, he said, I've been waiting for this call since your mother passed. Where are you right now? I'm at my mother's house in Akron, sitting next to an open safe she left behind. Don't touch anything. Don't talk to anyone. And don't leave that house. I'll be there in 4 hours. When he arrived, Marshall Theodore Vance was exactly the kind of man I expected. Tall, gray-haired, and worn by decades of hard experience. 2 other federal agents accompanied him. They spent 6 hours photographing documents, collecting evidence, and asking me questions about my life in California. Around midnight, we sat in my mother's kitchen. The smell of coffee and old books still lingered in the air. Your mother, Vance said quietly, was one of the bravest people I ever worked with. She knew they'd come for you eventually, so she prepared everything. The safe, the money, the code, using your birthday, even the investigators in California. She made sure you'd find the truth when you needed it most. That night, I finally began to understand the scale of what had happened. The Torino crime family had been tracking down witnesses from my father's murder trial for decades, but they'd evolved. They didn't kill openly anymore. They destroyed lives subtly, financially, legally, emotionally. They ruined reputations so no one would believe their targets, then waited for them to collapse on their own. They've been working on your case for at least 5 years, Vance told me. They found Cordelia through her real estate connections, people who knew people. It started as business, then it turned into manipulation. The investigators my mother had hired had uncovered a mountain of evidence, recordings of Cordelia meeting with Torino associates, proof of money exchanges, falsified documents, and witnesses paid to lie about me. The entire gambling addiction narrative had been built by professionals. The Torinos used the same playbook on 6 other witnesses over the last 15 years, Vance said. They destroy credibility first, then wait for the victim to retreat to familiar ground, just like you did. But what they hadn't planned for was my mother's foresight. When she died, the marshals had quietly set up surveillance around her Ohio house, waiting to see if anyone came looking for it. We've been watching this neighborhood for 2 years, Vance admitted. We knew if they forced you back here, they'd make a move, and we'd be ready. Then came the news that changed everything again. Also ardier. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Cordelia was arrested in Portland, along with 3 men who'd been following her. She'd believed they were private investigators helping her with the divorce. She had no idea they were tied to organized crime. She's agreed to testify, Vance told me later. Turns out she's as much a victim as you. They fed her lies, fake evidence, made her believe you were gambling, cheating, hiding money. They used her fear to destroy you. It was hard to process. The betrayal still hurt, but now there was something worse, understanding how easily fear and manipulation had turned her against me. That evening, I made the hardest phone call of my life to my kids. They were staying with Cordelia's sister in Portland, scared and confused. Dad? Quinlan's voice sounded small, uncertain. Hey, buddy, I said softly. I know this is all scary, but everything's going to be okay. Your mom and I love you very much, and none of this is your fault. Brina took the phone next. Mom said you stole money. Is that true? No, sweetheart, I said. I never stole anything. Some very bad people lied to hurt our family, but the truth's coming out now. We'll be together soon. For the first time in months, I believed it. The months that followed were a blur of investigations, courtroom hearings and late-night debriefings. The FBI reopened the Castellano case, connecting threads that had been dormant since 1989. It turned out my father, Vincent Castellano, had been an accountant for the Torino family, until he uncovered evidence of massive embezzlement and went to the authorities. He was supposed to enter witness protection with my mother, but before they could disappear, the Torinos found them. He was executed in front of her. She survived only because she escaped through a service alley, clutching me in her arms. For years afterward, The Torinos assumed we were both dead. That illusion shattered when Cordelia unknowingly led them back to me. With Marshal Vance's help, federal prosecutors built a new case, not just against the Torino family, but against their modern financial network, shell companies, laundering fronts, and hired specialists who destroyed people's lives digitally and legally, instead of with bullets. The charges included racketeering, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. Cordelia's cooperation proved invaluable. When she realized what she'd been part of, she collapsed in court. I'll never forget the look in her eyes when she finally understood, the disbelief, the guilt, the grief. "I didn't know," she told me during our first meeting in federal custody. "Fletch, I swear I didn't know. They told me you were gambling, that you'd hidden money from the kids. I thought I was protecting them." I believed her, not because I wanted to, but because I could see how broken she was. She'd been another pawn in a much bigger game. Over the next year, dozens of indictments followed. The Torino organization was dismantled in a multi-state operation. The agents called it Operation Silencer because their goal had been to erase every living witness from those old trials. By the time it was over, 11 men were in federal prison. 2 were dead from internal disputes, and Cordelia, after testifying, was given a new identity through witness protection. She'd never be able to return to her old life, but she'd finally found peace. As for me, I refused the new identity they offered. I'd spent my entire life running from a name I didn't even know I had. I was done hiding. I legally changed my name back to Fletcher Castellano, but I kept Morrison as my middle name, my mother's final gift. A year after the arrests, I sat on the front porch of that same Ohio house, now fully renovated, watching the sun rise over the maple trees. It was quiet, just the way Mom liked it. I'd sold everything in California and started working again, this time for the U.S. Marshal Service, consulting on identity fraud and witness recovery. They said my experience gave me a perspective no one else could offer. And then, on a cool morning in late April, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Quinlan and Bryna climbed out, taller now, older, but still carrying that same spark in their eyes. Behind them was their mother, standing back, nervous but hopeful. The court had granted shared custody months earlier, and the kids had chosen to spend the summer with me. When they stepped through that front door, I realized something. This house, once a refuge, then a hiding place, had finally become a home again. That night, as we ate dinner around my mother's old oak table, Bryna asked, "Dad, was Grandma really a secret agent?" I laughed, though my throat tightened. "Something like that," I said. "She was brave. She saved us." Quinlan leaned back in his chair. "So that means we're kind of part of the story too, right?" "Yeah," I said, "you are. But our part is about starting over and telling the truth, no matter how hard it is." After the kids went to bed, I walked down to the basement. The safe was still there, empty now, its door open like a wound that had finally healed. I touched the cold metal and thought about my mother's letter, her strength, her love, her foresight. For most of my life, I'd believed my story was one of loss. Losing my father, my marriage, my job, everything I'd built. But now I understood it wasn't about loss at all. It was about discovery. Sometimes life burns everything down to show you what's real. And what's real, for me, is this. I am Fletcher Castellano, son of Vincent and Wilfred Morrison, survivor of lies, witness to truth, and father to 2 extraordinary kids. The past tried to bury us, but my mother's love was stronger than fear. Her letter ended with a line I never fully appreciated until now. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the only thing that can set you free. She was right. Because losing everything was how I finally found out who I really was.